All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, there we go. So greetings, everyone. My name is Zaid Abukar. I am the Assistant Director for Scholarship and Supplemental Academic Services within the Office of Diversity and Inclusion at The Ohio State University. We are excited for our second event of Success in STEM Week with this evening's Industry Insider Chat, Breaking into Careers in Technology. Tonight, we'll have the opportunity and privilege to be able to speak with senior and executive leaders to get an inside look into what it was like for them to both get into and build a career in technology. We'll also gain insight on how you, as students, can prepare for careers in this realm of work during and after college. So the way that this will work is I'll start by very briefly introducing our guests. I'll ask them some questions during which they'll provide their expertise and experiences and advice and whatnot. Afterward, we'll open the mic up for the audience to be able to answer questions as well. Our main goal really in having this discussion is to really expand students' horizons about career possibilities in technology by hearing directly from high-level leaders who collectively have decades of experience. So without further ado, I'm going to start by introducing our guests. Well, first, let's do the event outline. So start by introducing our guests. We'll do the inside scoop from our guests, Q&A, and then closing. I do want to note that Mr. Al Hamid, unfortunately, may not be able to make tonight's event. He is traveling for an important business endeavor. And so either he might not be able to make it or he'll join late. But nonetheless, we do have Mr. Tony Fluellen with us. He is the Vice President for Information Technology Risk Management for Huntington National Bank. So at this point, Mr. Fluellen, what I'm going to do is stop sharing screen and we're going to chat about, I guess, your career in tech.
Sure.
So if you can, please tell us a little bit about your educational background and maybe your personal background. So hometown, what you majored in college, whatever it is you'd like to share.
Absolutely. So good evening, everyone. Tony Fluellen. It's an honor to be able to speak to you all today. So born in Columbus, born and raised in Columbus, Ohio, north side of Columbus. Went to college preparatory high school called Columbus Alternative High School. And obviously graduated from Ohio State, but I have a non-traditional background. My degree is actually not in anything related with technology. So my degree is in ag business and applied economics, right? So you're probably thinking like, how did I get over to technology? So it's a long story. We'll probably go through all of that throughout the discussion tonight, but it's definitely been a journey since leaving Ohio State into now kind of getting in technology. Some of my roles, but everything led up to being successful in a career in technology from working in thinking I wanted to be a lawyer, going to Capital University Law School, getting my paralegal certificate, and then the economy crashed, and then I had to use my degree from Ohio State to get a job in financial services and banking, right? And it just all led up to being able to get into a role in technology. So what I would say is honestly, to any type of role in technology, the biggest thing is to make sure that you're curious and you're willing to learn. That throughout my journey has helped me learn any and everything I needed to learn, is to be curious. So that's kind of the professional side. My personal background: I am a husband and a father of a 3-year-old. So that's always something keeping me on my toes. And I'm an entrepreneur. I do real estate, and then I own a transportation logistics company. So there's a lot going on, but technology is definitely the backbone for all of it. I'm a definite believer in systems, processes, and technology eases all of that, and being able to make lives easier in anything and everything that I do. So a little bit about me.
No, that was great, Tony. I really appreciated you highlighting that you didn't have like a straight line path to the position that you're in. And in some respects, some would consider it, a non-traditional path to get to where you are. If you will, maybe tell us a little bit about what were some of those experiences that you had while you were in college, or even experiences outside of college that led to your interest in technology?
Absolutely. So one thing that I would definitely stress for any student is to, while you're on the path of what you think you want to do in college in a major, go do some internships. Like, it's imperative. While I was at Ohio State, I was an inroads intern. And when I first started at Ohio State, I thought I wanted to be an electrical engineer. And I loved the actual technical piece of it, um, until I went to my first internship at Sprint in Mansfield, Ohio. So show up to the job, I can do the job is fine. But the engineers, they just sat in their cubes all day and they didn't talk to each other. I'm like, yeah, I'm an introvert, but like I need to talk to help problem solve and get some things together, like to kind of figure some things out, not just fingers on keyboard all day. And so I took that summer. After that summer, interning at that company, came back to Ohio State. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I want to reevaluate my major. Like, I like the technical aspect of it, um, and but I just don't like not having that that personal interaction. I like the problem solving, but I just don't like that just being able to specifically be keys hands on keyboard and not being able to relate and communicate to anyone. So switched and changed my major to business. But at the time, so much like now, it's so difficult. It was so difficult to get into Fisher. So I had taken 2.5 years ish of engineering courses to now try to switch back to go into Fisher, and it was like it was difficult to do. So that led me kind of going into the agriculture business, the ag school. And the misnomer is that I would get less of a business acumen in the ag school versus Fisher, and that's totally inaccurate. Like, you get the same type of detail, same type of rigor there. The focus and the business cases might just be based off of agriculture, feed, cattle, things of that nature, but all of it still applies, right? So from there, once I got out of Ohio State, getting my degree in ag business, applied economics, I had a well-rounded view of, hey, the business side of it. And I still was thinking I wanted to be on that problem-solving vein, and I always had an itch to get into legal and law. So my first job out of Ohio State was working for BMW Financial Services. So this started this whole thing for me in financial services, right? So BMW Financial Services, for those who don't know, is located in, I think it's considered Dublin, but on the northwest side of northwest suburb of Columbus, Ohio. And it was an interesting experience for me. First cool job out of college. Basically, I had the ability to talk to high net worth individuals and help solve their problems as it related to their BMW vehicles. Helping them work through their problems with the dealership. And I really was able to get a better sense of like the customer service problem solving side of it, even though it wasn't like strictly technology. But one thing I began to learn is like, hey, take the learning lesson from this thing and begin to apply it to the next role. So because of that particular company, I realized like, hey, if financial services is something that I liked, but I would like to do more in more of my skill set. So I decided to take a leap. When I was at B&W Financial Services, I'm like, hey, I really want to explore this legal route, right? So from there, I went to California University Law School and got my paralegal certificate. And that was right around 2008, 2009. So for those that don't know, that's when the economy crashed and the bubble burst. So the housing market crashed. So what happened was it caused all of your jobs that you think were high net worth or high value for everyone to kind of take a step back. So as soon as I was coming out after getting my paralegal degree, basically all your lawyers had to fire all their paralegals and basically do all the work themselves, right? So just for context, a paralegal to a lawyer is like a nurse to a doctor, right? They might disagree, but basically the nurses do all the work and the doctor comes in and signs the paper, right? Same thing with a paralegal. Paralegal does all the work. The lawyer will come in and basically present the case. So another fun fact, the reason why the lawyers call it the bar. If you ever looked at a courtroom, there's a bar that separates the court from the rest of the audience. So passing the bar means they're able to go around or past that little bar to present to the court. It's another fun fact. But anyway, I went. Yeah, exactly. So from that point, I dabbled in financial services again. So at that point, JP Morgan Chase and all of the banks were mandated by President Obama to give all of homeowners that had home loans that were basically overinflated. So basically, because the economy crashed, the value of your home sank, but the value of your loan that you had to pay did not, right? So it caused the market to go upside down, especially on the coast. So California and New York, right? So at the time, President Obama signed the document. It was the Home Affordable Act, and basically required all banks to reevaluate all of the loans that they had. So it required a lot more people to be hired to deal with that, right? So took a job at JP Morgan Chase, and basically my role was to help people through their paperwork to evaluate what their loans were, if we were to give them loan modifications to reduce the payments on their loans, things of that nature. So it was cool for the first couple of weeks, but I realized how bad the economy was, right? And how the economy impacted a lot of people. So I went over from that role and went to the back office. And this is kind of where more of my legal analytical skills came in. My role was then to evaluate all of our policies and procedures on how we do bankruptcies and foreclosures in the bank, and then present that case back to our loan servicers like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. And trust me, I'm getting somewhere on how I get to technology. So the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, right? So I took all of that data. My job was to analyze all those court documents, all of our loans, because at the time, the banks were foreclosing on like soldiers and sailors when we shouldn't be doing it. They were doing what's called robo signing just to get the houses foreclosed quickly. So basically sending them to the courts and then having just a person there just signing them all the time and not actually running it through the process. So it was a lot of fraud, right? So my view was basically to write those reports up and then send them back to the government. So looking at all of that, I'm like, man, I'm never, ever, ever going to get a house or a car because I don't want to own anything. It was just kind of scary, just like looking at all that stuff, right? So I spent a year, some change, 2 years doing that role. And then this is a key point. So I finally got, I was kind of hitting a wall where I'm like, man, I got 2 degrees and I'm still, kind of like in less than middle management. Like I'm not on the phones, but I'm not like where I want to be. And I have 2 degrees. So I finally reached out at JP Morgan Chase. They had it's called the Black Organization for Leadership Development, or BOLD. So it's a affinity group basically. So I reached out through that group and got a mentor. And my mentor actually was white. He was like, "Hey, I'll be willing to sponsor you to come over to technology." He said it's going to be a huge undertaking. You might have to learn some new terminology, so on and so forth. He said, but based off of the work that you've done so far in the legal analysis, that same key skill will help you in this role in technology. And he said, because you already have the operational knowledge of dealing with the lines of businesses on these aspects, like you will be key in technology. I'm like, all right, if you believe in me, I believe in you, and I'll take the chance, right? So transfer over the technology, and that was the best thing I ever could have done. So he was right. Once I got over into technology, one of the biggest things with technologists, and I would definitely caution anyone, watching this or learning from this, one of the things with technologists that we seem to forget is that technology exists to support the business, right? I'm gonna say it again, technology exists to support the business. So even still today, your developers, your CIOs, your CTOs, oftentimes have difficulty communicating to the folks that basically are signing the checks, right? So for instance, I have a product that, so the business has a problem that needs to solve for. So they're trying to get their documents on the website to be signed, right? So that is their problem. The technologist is basically talking in ones and zeros in code, and there's no one in the middle to kind of help translate how to get the problem solved, right? So when I moved over to technology, because I had the expertise of working on the operational side, I was able to bridge the gap between the line of business and our technology. And one of my the biggest roles at that particular point in time that I was able to accomplish was we at the time, JP Morgan Chase did not have the ability to a uniform process to grant access to all of their applications in the bank. So we had a system that governed all of the access, but we needed to get all the demographic data for every single application. Like, what does the application do? What does it control? How many entitlements? Like, where does it sit? Like all these different things. Like, what is it connected to? So my job was to interview all of our business counterparts, get that data, and then translate it to our technology folks so they could build the proper connections, right? So it was like a custom fit role for me to kind of get over there. So that started my role in technology, and that was in identity and access management, which is more of like a broader stroke of technology. And then from there, I took more and more specialized roles until I just kind of branched out and did different things. And one of the coolest roles that I was able to do was working through as an information technology risk manager, but within JP Morgan Chase, we had a opportunity where we work with our financial technology companies, or fintech. So I did a lot of traveling. I was in Silicon Valley, I was in New York, Austin, Houston, all of the hot areas, right, for all of the fintechs, right? So my job was to evaluate their controls, and basically my thumbs up or thumbs down would determine if JP Morgan Chase would do business with this fintech in order for them to push this product out to all of their customers. So again, for those that don't know, a lot of the cool stuff that you see, I don't know if there are Chase customers here, a lot of cool things that you see, like on a Chase app or Chase website, they're owned or developed by a third party. And then Chase will basically either buy or white label that product. So basically get a blank version of the product, put their name on it, and then push it out to the customer. So my role was to make sure that all of their controls are where they needed to be. And then, work with the developers to make sure where we could get it out to our customers in a safe and sound manner. and then go from there. So that was like one of the coolest roles at JP Morgan Chase. And then I've just kind of been in different varied roles from there. And then here recently, well, 3 years ago, transferred over to Huntington, where I'm kind of doing something similar. So.
Yeah, no, Tony, that was actually a very interesting ride that you took us on there.
Sure.
You know, what I really appreciated about your story is that it seems like no experience went to waste, right?
Right.
Everything you went through, even starting with the internships, right? It seemed like one of the most valuable things that you got from participating in an internship was learning what it is you don't want to do.
Absolutely.
And I think people often underrate how important it is to figure out early on what it is you don't want to do as much as what it is you do want to do.
Correct.
And then just following your trajectory, right? You went from engineering to business to ag business. You got your first job at B&W doing financial services. You then moved over, you learned a lot of customer service lessons, right?
Right.
You're able to then incorporate into your profession, and then you went and got a paralegal certificate, financial services again. And so it's, again, a very fascinating story. And I think that's something that a lot of our audience members need to take into account, which is you don't always need to have a straight path. You don't always need to know
Absolutely.
what you want to do. But if you can figure out the things you like to do and keep kind of following that, you'll eventually get to the right place. Awesome. So you talked a little bit about your first role after college and a little bit about your journey towards becoming a senior leader. But I guess, tell us a little bit about what does a typical day look like in your role now at Huntington National Bank? What does that look like? What are some of the more exciting things? Maybe some of the more not so exciting things? What does that look like today?
Absolutely. So in my current role, I handle all of our products and services risk assessment. So any new cool thing that, well, I don't say necessarily new cool, any new thing that, any new product or service that our segments or lines of business want to come up with, it comes to a forum. So everything from, hey, we want to paint the branches blue instead of green, to, hey, we want to dump all of this data on the cloud. Like, it comes through this particular forum. So like, that's one of the coolest things to kind of hear. And then also, Huntington just acquired and completed the conversion of a bank here recently, TCF, right? So over the past year and some change, we have been basically converting all of their systems into our systems. So a part of that has been, we're working a huge digital transformation. So basically, I would say, and some may beg to differ, but I would say from a digital transformation piece, because Huntington is a smaller regional bank, they are behind a little bit from like your Wells Fargo, from a Chase, things of that nature. So they're still competing or they're still working to complete some of the digital transformation pieces. So a part of that, the way that Huntington is going about it is through a software development lifecycle methodology called Agile. So basically, Agile is a more collaborative way of development, of project management, so on and so forth, versus your traditional waterfall. Hopefully some of your classes, you guys are learning this stuff, but basically waterfall is more sequential, or one thing has to get done and approved before it goes to the next step, before it goes to the next step, before it goes to the next step, much like a traditional waterfall. Whereas Agile is more of continuous improvement and continuous development, and it kind of goes into a circle. So in Agile, you have smaller pieces that are completed until it gets to a larger whole, but the smaller pieces are usable pieces, versus waterfall, like you won't get the complete product until the end of the waterfall, right? So it takes, I don't know, 12 to 24 months for a full project to get done um, versus in an agile project, you might have 1/10 of the full product done. And you have the reason why I call it agile, because it's like if the segment or the line of business wants to make a change, because they're not working on the full thing the whole time, they can quickly make a change on a design and not waste money. Or they can quickly make a change and say, hey, you know, let's scrap this. And the full budget was not wasted. Um, so we're working through that transformation now. So from a information technology risk management process, because it is traditionally a faster process where faster decisions need to be made, um, versus like a one check the box one time in waterfall. From an information technology risk management perspective, we're working on making sure that all of the right risk, so legal risk and compliance decisions, are made in those little pods. What I've developed or helped develop is a working engagement model that ensures that the right decisions are flagged so that it does not slow down the business, but it also ensures that we are in compliance with any and all regulator concerns, industry risk standards, and then that we're staying in compliance of that, because that you have the potential, because so much is going on so fast, you have the potential for things to go haywire faster, right? So that is kind of like the coolest part of my day, just seeing all of the brand new products that are coming along and that we're trying to do, and like how fast it's going. I would say the least exciting part of my day is all of the executive level reporting that I have to do. Like it's crazy. So um, on a quarterly basis, we have like a 30-page report that goes all the way up to the CEO on all things risk related. So um, in any traditional bank, there should be what's called 3 lines of defense. You have your first line of defense, which is your first line regional partners, which is basically your operational folks, or the folks that are actually doing and executing the process and procedures. You have second line, who basically is checking the first line. They'll do quality assurance checks on their process and procedures, and then give recommendations on how they can improve. And then you have third line. Third line is traditionally your internal audit, which is definitely a good career for folks that are kind of starting out. This is a little star note there. So basically, with the 3 lines of defense, right, they each produce a report on how they're doing, the health of their segment, and all the IT risks and risk overall, second line and third line. So I currently sit in the second line. So because of I'm talking about the reporting, right? So I'm looking at, 9 different segments. I may look at like a broad stripe of like, I should say, vulnerability management, right? So I may be looking at certain vulnerabilities on critical applications across 10 lines of businesses, and getting detail on anomalies, right? But also trying to provide that and put it in executive level speak, so I'm not talking ones and zeros to the CEO, who really just wants to know at the end of the day, what do I need to do about it? Should it keep me up at night? How much is it costing me, right? So being able to translate that, I think sometimes it's like the difficult part is trying to pick out what's important and why, because it may be important to me, but it may not be important to him on a higher macro level, I should say. So that's like the least fun part of my job, is like the all the reporting that's tied to it, because sometimes it's manual, and then sometimes it's like if something happens, it's like, all right, produce me a report, let me know how I can do it, that type of thing. So that's the least fun part.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And the part, it sounds like the piece that you really love the most about your current role is being able to innovate, to take something and build it and watch it progress and develop over time, and to know that you played a key role in that, and to try new things and to see it making a tangible impact on the business, right? To make things more efficient, to make things more timely, faster, and to make sure that you're still in compliance with all of the policies and regulations that you're beholden to. And then of course, the piece you don't like the most, which I think a lot of people in various fields can relate to, which is the executive reporting, right?
Absolutely.
And, um, the political side of, some folks only want to know certain things, and figuring out what are their preferences, what information do they need. And sometimes I'm sure, Tony, you're probably asked to make a quick pivot and to provide information on a really tight deadline. And I imagine that can be stressful sometimes as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great. So, this is a question that kind of relates to the question I asked earlier, which is, it seems like you didn't always know that this was what you wanted to do per se, as far as the specific title. But when it comes to being in a leadership position and being responsible for people and processes, would you say that that's something you knew you always wanted to do, regardless of what field you were going to be in, that you wanted to be in a leadership position? Tell us a little bit about that.
So that's a great question. I always kind of go back and forth. So I will always suggest everyone to quickly determine in their career if they want to be a leader or individual contributor, right? And even in your projects that you're working on in college, like at some point you're going to have to be an individual contributor, and also a leader. Like you just have to understand what that looks like and what you're built for. There are times in my career where like being an individual contributor was best. But there's also times where being a leader and leading a team is best, right? So you're gonna have to figure out like what that looks like in your career. So for my current role, for my current role, I am an individual contributor. However, I have to lead with influence across folks that are not even in my organizational chain. So like that is probably one of the most difficult things because everyone has competing priorities as far as what they think, what they believe is most important for their particular area, so on and so forth. So again, there's pros and cons on each side. Leadership is cool. There are different types of leaders, so you would need to determine what type of leader you are. I prescribe to servant leadership. So servant leadership is, I think, is the best type of leadership because obviously the goal of any leader is to have followers, to have successful followers, right? So being able to equip the people that you are leading with everything and equip and empower them is the best thing. You never want to be able to disable or handicap them or require them to be dependent on you in making decisions. You want to equip and empower them on how to make a decision. Sometimes kind of like using the Socratic method, like asking them why are you thinking that way? Not to be obtuse, but just helping them to think through the particular process, right? Or when you start to identify you have strong players on your team, to begin to groom them to take your role. It sounds so crazy, but you want to make sure that you are equipping others around you. And I think that's a key point of leadership, equipping the folks that want it to grow and develop and take your role. And ultimately what happens is like, they'll get to a point like, man, like I really don't want to leave your team, but it's almost like got to kick them out of that. It's like, no, you are empowered. You know how to do all these things. You've demonstrated these competencies. Go try this out, right? And I think I've been blessed to have leaders that have developed me and shaped me in those particular roles. Whereas like, man, I may not want to take this leadership opportunity, but they're almost like, nah, you need to. This is the next step in your journey.
Yeah. No, that's so good, and it actually resonates a lot with the kind of work that I do. I work in obviously a different field, higher education, administration, but a lot of the same principles apply. You know, I was an individual contributor for many years, and over the past 3 years, I've been a people leader, right? And the
Hmm.
very different skill sets and different impacts on the organization, but both very important. And so, something you really want to ask yourself, whether you're a college student now or working in an entry level kind of position, is starting to figure out, do I want to be the best at what I specifically do, or do I want
Right,
to be in a position where I can lead a team and help others and develop other leaders? And there's no easy answer to that question, right?
right,
I have a mind saying that this is what I want to do, and then you get some experiences, you get some mentors, and maybe you decide something else is for you. So, but I appreciate you making that distinction. So I only have like 3 or so questions left, but
sure.
just wanted to kind of give you a sense for, what's left here. But my next question for you, Tony, is, what are some of the common misconceptions about having a job in IT technology? And I guess sort of in addition to that, so what are the common misconceptions? Maybe tell us a little bit about what you wish people knew about IT risk management, your area of expertise.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think I tried to touch on it a little bit earlier, but you called it out specifically, is honestly the best technologists and best folks that are in risk management come from a non-traditional role. Like have come through a non-traditional background, because you're able to um, apply a different lens versus someone that has always or has been trained to look at things in one way. Um, as a matter of fact, the chief information security officer for Huntington National Bank has a degree in history, like performing arts and history, right? And it seems so crazy, but because of his background in history, he has like amazing recall for date for like data stats, things of that nature. It can like it's just crazy, like how his collegiate training helps him in his particular role. Right now, of course, he's had to learn along the way of learning about apps and development and infrastructure. Yes, he's had to learn all the way, but like the point I'm trying to make is his non-traditional training has helped them get to where he is right now. So that's probably the first thing is um, is understand that there are multiple entry points into technology. And even there are even roles that do not require college degrees. um, get certifications to kind of get started. And what I will say is, because you all are going through obviously one of the top universities, you do have a leg up in getting some of that training. I actually know a couple of the people, so the CISO at OSU, former CISO Helen Patton, and some of the folks that work in the technology side there as well. Like they have been for a while, trying to make sure that they provide or are able to provide real time job type access or data into the classes and the technology classes that you guys are taking, so that you guys aren't leaving or getting what you're learning in the classroom does not apply to real life, right? So that's the biggest thing, is like understanding how what you're learning translates to an actual company. So the biggest misnomer is like it's not hard to get into. The only limiting factor is you. Like again, you just have to stay curious and learning. One cool thing that I definitely would say as a tip is to create like a Google alert, right? So one of my mentors always, and I always have a watch on. He always told me like always know what time it is. Like always know what time it is. And I mean it's literally and figuratively. So um, he always had me read at the time like the newspaper, and he would always quiz me on current events. So how does this apply to you, right? So for instance, my suggestion is to create a Google alert and then put in something like technology breaches or whatever your specialty is, right? And every day, Google will send you 10 to 20 articles of like current events as it relates to technology, right? Or I have a Google alert still for fintech, right? Because I always want to know like what's going on in fintech. So every day, Google sends me 10 to 15 articles on like technology, fintechs, things that happen, right? So like you just want to know, be in the know of like what is going on, because when it comes down to um, you and the next person, when you're getting in interviews or interviews for internships or jobs, they want to know that you are aware of like what is going on in technology. You just have not been in a bubble of college for so long that you can't easily translate into the real world. Yes, you will have to get trained on the policies and procedures of that particular company, how they're doing it when they go, but you have a leg up if you understand that the real world events. Like for instance, when Facebook and Instagram went down, do you guys understand what the technology happened, what from a technology perspective happened in the background, like what caused all that? Like I think that's like a cool use study for everyone to understand, like what caused all that to happen, right? So things of that nature, like obviously that is probably the biggest thing, is just the biggest misnomer is like just do a little bit of research and digging behind everything that's out there, and become more aware. Like everything that you're doing and learning in these classes applies to real life, like applies to real life. So
Yeah, I gotta say, I really appreciate the Google Alert suggestion. I think that's something I
okay.
implement right away. And I also appreciated your piece about the importance of being able to speak on current events in your field if you're trying to break into that field, and more importantly, being able to put into context what's happening within that organization and how it relates to what's going on in the broader environment. If you're a student and you want to work for a certain company or take on a certain job, you really have to kind of elevate your thinking about what's going on in the big picture. And so I really appreciate that. And so I guess I'm going to ask you two more questions, actually.
Sure.
We have a little bit of time. And you talked on some of this already, but feel free to elaborate or repeat. But what are some skills or abilities that you believe are important for students to build now that will help them later on, be it for a career in technology or even anything else? But what are those skills that they can be building now while they're college students taking these classes at Ohio State that can help them later on?
Great question. And what I would definitely say is understand cloud computing. So we are in a transformation where what we traditionally see and know as it relates to data is stored and managed differently. So every company has some semblance of their data residing in either Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, I forget IBM's, but they all have their own. But the two main ones are Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure. So understand cloud computing, understand how all of that works. Go after their certifications. You can do that now. You can go after an Amazon Web Services certification or Microsoft Azure certification. And basically there's different levels. So there's Amazon Cloud Practitioner, and the Microsoft has their same type of one, where it just basically talks about the general concepts, right, of what that is. And then you'll get actual certification with that. You put that on your resume going in day one as a college student to one of those classes, they already know like, hey, he or she knows how to think about cloud computing and things of that nature. What I would tell you, and I'm sure you've looked at any and all industry data about the shortage of technology professionals that we have, and how it's going to continue to grow. Cloud computing is probably at the tip top of that, because the current workforce has been focused on, data on premises and servers, hard drives, databases, and it has been a learning curve in getting people to understand how to build with the cloud from a cloud first perspective, right? So building on platform as a service or infrastructure as a service, software as a service, right? And all those terms, they sound like crazy terms, but platform as a service, software as a service is basically what your apps are, right? So basic software as a service, to give you a perfect example, I'm sure everyone has done a Netflix and chill, right? So Netflix is software as a service. So Netflix, all of its data is stored on the Amazon Web Services cloud. For those that didn't know that, right? So what happens is the software, you guys download the app, whether it be on your Apple TV or on your Fire Stick, right? So that is the software. So you guys do not actually have the hardware. It's like the software presented on the cloud, software as a service, and you're able to stream, right? So even if you're saving data locally to the Fire Stick, it's still saved into the cloud. It's saved in the cloud, right? So that is how all of that works. That's software as a service, like at a specific level, right? But learning like the details behind that and like how companies can save money by storing their data on the cloud, how to build apps in the cloud, start development in the cloud. That is probably the biggest need right now for any and all companies, whether it be financial services to pharmaceuticals to you name it. Every company right now is looking to start building and developing all of their stuff in the cloud or transition to the cloud, because from a dollars and cents perspective, they save so much more money by putting and storing that data and housing the data in the cloud versus having it on premises in like a physical data center that they're managing and that they're owning. So that is probably the biggest suggestion right now, is making sure that everyone comes in or comes out of college with some semblance of understanding of what cloud computing is.
All right, students. So you heard it here first. Cloud computing. Get with
Absolutely.
cost, right? It is an area that is ever expanding, and regardless of the field that you're in, business that you work for, whatever, everyone uses the cloud. So that point is very well taken. So I guess my last question to you, and again, I have to emphasize how much we appreciate your time and expertise. But my last question is, what, if any, final pieces of advice would you like to leave with the college students, the OSU students who are watching this? And it can be about anything.
Sure. I think, so I'll say this. So my brother just graduated from OU. So I'll be 40 next year, right? Graduated in 2006. So I've been out of college for 15 years, right? My brother just graduated OU in 2018. He was not able to have a traditional graduation because of COVID, right? So there is a silver lining in all this happening right now, right? Some of you, I don't know how further along you are in your journeys, basically spent all last year taking online classes, right? So there's a silver lining in all of this. Every single company has had to execute on their business continuity, their business resiliency plans, and beef up all of their technology to do things like Zoom. Companies that never had in-person meetings are doing everything in Zoom. So the point I'm trying to make is the need is ever present for folks to understand those types of technologies, because again, technology exists to support the business. So the sooner that you can understand that and absorb that and be able to offer your skill set to those particular companies with viable solutions, that's what they need. And then also to that, understanding that diversity is an asset. Diversity is an asset. Diversity of thoughts, diversity of color, diversity of perspective, diversity of gender. It is a needed asset. Um, Oftentimes still, I may be the only Black male in a room, only Black person in a room, right? And sometimes I find myself getting small, but then I have to understand that I am in that room for a reason, right? I am in that room for a reason. And I have a seat at that table for a reason. So, what I will also want you all to understand is um, to be selective in the companies that you are soliciting or going to make sure that they are champions of diversity, champions of inclusion, documented, not just, we donated X amount of money, like documented champions of diversity and inclusion. Do your due diligence on those companies. I like to call it do your reconnaissance. So if you have friends that are alumni, reach out to them and say, hey, like what is their onboarding program look like? What is their community of Black technologists or female technologists or Asian technologists, whatever it may be? What is their community like? Are they close knit? Like, is there an area for me to feel safe to kind of voice my concerns? Like all of those things is very, very important, because the technology side, the work will take care of itself. But if you're not able to quickly acclimate to any of those companies, you'll have a miserable time, right? And that is probably one of the most important things, just to understand that diversity is an asset. So when you go in and you have that mindset and understand that, like in all those times when you want, like feel like you want to be small, like no, like I'm an asset to this company and they hired me for a reason, to hire to do a job. So I need to make sure that I'm showing up every day and providing that. So that's my 2 cents on that, is just making sure that you understand diversity is an asset, and to be a diverse technologist is huge, like is needed, because there is a definite shortage on that. So the talent and the need and the want is there, and understand, because you are an asset, right, that you have multiple options afforded to you. So when you're seeking out all those opportunities, make sure that you're taking that into mind and choose wisely.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks so much, ladies and gentlemen. Vice President for IT Risk Management, Mr. Tony Fluellen. I want to thank you directly, Mr. Fluellen, for sharing your knowledge and perspectives this evening. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here tonight. This event is being recorded, and so we hope to make this recording available on the Office of Diversity and Inclusion's YouTube channel, so that we can share this video with thousands of our ODI scholars. So definitely keep an eye on that. I also want to point out that we do have additional events this week. So yesterday we had our first event. It was a student panel of current OSU students taking STEM classes, and they were giving advice on how to do well in those different areas: physics, math, biology, chemistry, and so on. Tonight, obviously, we had our technology insider chat. Tomorrow, we'll have the Office of Undergraduate Research talk about getting involved in research. And then Thursday, we'll have a panel of current students in medical school, nursing, physician's assistant school, pharmacy, talking about the transition from being an undergrad to being in a healthcare program. So again, Mr. Fluellen, just want to thank you for your time. I'm going to stop recording right now.